There's a special kind of silence that falls over an arena when giants step into the ring. Not tall men, not heavy men, but human monoliths, one-man armies wrapped in flesh and muscle, moving with the kind of weight that makes even the air seem nervous. The crowd leans forward with their jaws slack, knowing that when titans collide, something brutal, something unforgettable, is about to unfold. These aren't simply fights. These are seismic events. Among the giants who once shook arenas with every step, few figures are as misunderstood or as underestimated as Bob Sapp. Today, his name is often tossed around as a joke, a caricature of a fighter who became more spectacle than threat. But there was a time when the sight of Sapp marching toward the ring struck fear into even the most hardened warriors. Before the questionable fights, before the decline, there was a peak version of this massive predator, a beast who devoured opponents, leaving behind nothing but crumpled bodies and shattered confidence. From the first moment of one of his most ruthless clashes, Sapp moved with purpose, barreling forward like a runaway freight train. His opponent, a massive man who looked more like a walking pantry than an athlete, barely had time to react. Sapp went straight for the head, swinging with the merciless precision of a man who understood the destructive potential of every limb he carried. The ring shook with each impact. The crowd roared as Sapp hammered the heavyweight backward, then down, then backward again. The giant tried to salvage his pride by attempting to turn the fight into a sumo contest, hoping the advantage of sheer mass would slow the beast. But Sapp refused to be dragged into that desperate strategy. In a sudden flash, quicker than anyone expected from a man of his size, he launched a devastating punch that detonated on his opponent's jaw. It wasn't a strike, it was artillery fire. The colossal man crumpled, and the arena erupted in a thunderous mix of shock and awe. For a moment, everyone remembered exactly why they once called Bob Sapp the Beast. But if that clash was brutal, what awaited in the rugged depths of Russia was something far more primitive. There, on a night when rules seemed optional and chaos was celebrated, a gathering of monstrous fighters created a spectacle that felt more like ancient warfare than modern sport. It was bare-knuckle combat at its rawest, a meeting of titans whose bodies looked forged for destruction. The bell rang, and one fighter, built like a mutated version of Khabib Nurmagomedov, fed a steady diet of steroids and raw meat, charged forward with terrifying velocity. He swung with the ferocity of a bear tearing into fresh prey, each punch landing with echoes that rippled across the hall. His opponent, another behemoth, was chopped down repeatedly, his enormous frame smacking against the ground like a felled tree. Yet the fallen warrior refused to surrender. Again and again he rose, fueled not by strength but by sheer stubbornness. His face battered, his stance unsteady, but his will unbroken. And then, in a moment that stunned even the jaded spectators, he mounted a comeback. Drawing from a last reserves of energy lodged somewhere deep in his massive body, he fired back with heavy, desperate punches that forced his rival to reconsider the outcome. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the fight might turn. But the Yeti-like brute across from him rejected that possibility with contempt. With renewed fury, he stormed forward once more and launched a series of violent blows that sent his opponent's massive body crashing lifelessly to the canvas. When the dust settled, the bearded destroyer stood victorious. But the real victory belonged to the fans, who had just witnessed one of the most savage heavyweight exchanges in recent memory. Violence between giants isn't always elegant, but sometimes it becomes unforgettable. In 2011, the ring hosted a clash between Alexander Lungu and Neil Cook, two men whose physiques looked less like the sculpted forms of elite fighters and more like the shapes of regulars at a brewery. Stomachs bouncing with each step, faces flushed, lungs taxed before the bell had even rung. But any laughter ended the moment the fight began. Lungu, carrying the explosive energy of an enraged bull, charged forward and let his fists fly. Cook, despite the storm approaching, had the audacity to provoke him, tossing out gestures meant to taunt, hoping to disrupt the Romanian powerhouse. But Lungu was not the kind of man who tolerated disrespect. In response, he unleashed a barrage of brutal strikes that shook Cook to his core. Blow by blow, he forced Cook downward until the big man could do nothing but kneel, humbled under the weight of Lungu's fury. The victory was decisive, emphatic, and brutally reminiscent of old-school toughness. Yet perhaps the strangest, most visually striking encounter arrived in 2016, when two complete opposites stepped into the ring. One fighter looked like a real-life kung fu panda, round, cheerful, and padded with layers of soft armor, as if he'd come straight from a buffet line. Across from him stood Hong Man Choi, a towering skyscraper of a human being whose gigantic proportions seemed unreal, almost engineered. Their tension ignited long before the first punch, with sparks flying at the press conference as their mismatched silhouettes collided in the camera's glare. When the bell finally rang, the panda-shaped contender shocked everyone. With surprising agility for a man of his build, he exploded forward and unleashed a flurry of punches, swinging with the desperation and enthusiasm of someone fighting not for victory, but for the last piece of fried chicken on earth. The crowd alternated between laughter, cheers, and stunned silence as the underdog pressed on, driven by heart rather than physique. But size in the world of giants is still a weapon, and Choi possessed it in overwhelming supply. With a single committed sequence, as if reaching down from the clouds themselves, he delivered a crushing blow that flipped the entire fight. His opponent hit the canvas, and the battle ended in sudden, devastating fashion. It was a vivid reminder that no matter how explosive a fighter's spirit may be, physics and biology sometimes have the final word. By the end of these clashes, one truth becomes undeniable. When giants collide, the ring transforms into a place where power bends reality, where weight becomes a weapon of its own, and where every punch carries the threat of an ending. These aren't just fights. They're spectacles etched into the memory of anyone lucky or unlucky enough to witness them. In a world obsessed with speed, skill, and precision, there remains something timeless, something primal, about watching two titans test the limits of human strength. If you enjoyed stepping into the world of colossal warriors and the brutal battles that define them, tell me in the comments which giant showdown you want to see covered next. Your suggestions shape the future of these stories. So don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic breakdowns of the most unforgettable fights on Earth.